have come across in the last 4 to 5 years that I highly recommend members of the board look at and members of the curriculum development teams look at, and it's called The Warmth of Other Suns. It's by Isabella Wilkinson, and it addresses how the Civil War really didn't ever free Black people, African Americans, the way that my generation was taught that it did. Reformation really didn't work, and neither did the Jim Crow laws. And then this book goes on to do a beautiful job of showing us how we got to where we are today through the stories of people during the Great Migration. Thank you so much. I appreciate this opportunity.
That concludes citizen comments. It looks like we lost the live stream for a minute, but we'll make sure and add those into the archive if possible.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. All right, that concludes our citizens' comments for tonight. Thank you to everyone that called in. That takes us to item 3, the superintendent's report. Dr. Pearson.
Yes, I would just like to begin by thanking members of the community for engaging in a conversation with us as we work on the issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our district. I appreciate the responses that we've received thus far, both tonight in comments, but also via emails. And please know that this is a journey for us as a district. We have quite a bit of work to do in this area. And as we outlined in our email last week, there really are 2 steps that we plan on taking as we get ready to begin the school year. One is putting together a committee to help us look at issues of equity in our district, as well as just a review of some of our curriculum resources, materials, policies, and procedures. So you can look for more information about that coming forward, but those are some of the first steps that we will be taking, and we will continue to engage in conversation as we begin to work through this in our district and community. So thank you for your responses. I would like to just speak also for a minute to the IHSA information that was posted on Friday night on their website about return to play and stage 1 return to play across the state related to athletics. To say that it was a little bit of a surprise to many of us across the state and superintendents would be an understatement. We weren't exactly expecting that information to be released in that manner and in that timeline. However, I think just like many of us, IHSA is trying to find ways that we can do things to support students and student athletes as we begin to look at reopening schools. And so they have provided some guidelines that our athletic directors and principals were reviewing today as we look at our high school athletic programs. If you go to the IHSA website and look at the return to play guidelines, please understand that this first stage is a very limited scope in the kinds of activities that students can engage in. It really is around strength and conditioning kinds of training. There's no actual sports activities. You can't use sports equipment or run sports drills related to specific sports or programs, but running exercises to build physical fitness. And then weightlifting is allowed in this particular first phase with guidelines. The groups have to be fewer than 10 students, including the coach. There has to, of course, be all the social distancing that is maintained. And so anyway, we're working through a plan as a district. We hope to have something together by the end of this week so that we could at least to begin to support our student athletes. We anticipate that as we move to stage 4 in the state, that there will be another opportunity to maybe expand some of our programming and access for our athletes. I know our coaches and athletic directors are talking about what that might look like. We certainly want to get our students back to school to participate in some of these programs. We know what an integral part of the summer experience it is for students, but we also have to remember that we have to follow the safety guidelines that have been established by the Illinois Department of Health and the Illinois State Board of Education. So look for information from us by the end of this week for this first stage of return to play. Again, it's very limited in scope, and we hope to be able to begin to have some of our athletes come back and participate in that strength and conditioning planning. I also just wanted to mention that we do have the Return to School Planning Committee going right now. There are actually 6 subcommittees that are working on a return to school plan for us as a district. Those committees are instruction, social and emotional health and well-being, building health and safety, communication, transportation and food service, and human resources. Each one of these groups actually has representation of over 100, well, the whole committee has representation of over 100 staff, students, parents, and community members on each of these different committees. So we have quite a bit of stakeholder input as we are working to try to plan for our return to school in the fall. I just want to remind everyone that as we think about this return to school plan, that we are prioritizing student and staff safety while providing a sense of normalcy for students as we plan to return to school to the greatest extent possible within the guidelines from the Illinois State Board of Education and Illinois Department of Health. And that's kind of our guiding parameter as we do this work together. We want to ensure that we are able to provide as safe and extensive of an experience for students as possible. So that being said, there's a lot of work to be done. We are going to provide some regular updates throughout the summer. The reason there hasn't been one to date is because we really have just gotten started. We're waiting for some guidance from the state of Illinois, which has not yet been provided. And we hope to have something by the middle of June. And once we have information to share, we will do district-wide communication similar to what we did during the remote learning process with parent links and messages out to the community that we will then also post on the website. So people will know what progress is being made, what kinds of decisions are being made, and what our timeline is for return to school when we have that information to share. So I want to thank all of the staff, students, parents, and community members that are serving on these committees, helping us think through some of the issues and logistics that we need for planning. And we look forward to putting together a comprehensive and solid plan for return to school in the fall, given the guidelines that are going to be provided. At this time, I would also like to take the opportunity to actually introduce a new staff member to you. We have joining our staff on July 1st, Dr. Denise Herman. Dr. Herman is returning to District 303 after I think she started her career here, and she can tell you a little bit about that. But we are very excited to have her returning as our Chief Academic Officer. We look forward to having her join our district leadership team. And I have asked Dr. Herman to join us. You can see she's here on the call tonight, and she's going to be saying hello and just providing a quick introduction. Dr. Herman.
Thank you, Dr. Pearson, and it's wonderful to get to speak with all of you tonight. I am absolutely thrilled to be rejoining CUSD 303. I have an affinity for the district. When I was young, I went to kindergarten, first and second grade at Anderson School, and then my family moved west. And then when I finished up my chemistry degree and wanted to get my teaching certification, I did my student teaching in St. Charles. But then I wanted to get my graduate degree, and so I went back to NIU and finished up my master's. But when I was ready to teach again, I picked D303 and started my teaching career in 1991. So I taught chemistry, mostly a little bit of biology, for 9 years. And then I, with Mark Moore and Audra Christensen and hundreds of other people, helped open up North High School. And I was assistant principal there for 6 years. So I really have had an enormous amount of respect for the people and the high quality schools and education that St. Charles offers its community. So I've been in California for the last 6 years. And when I decided to return to the Midwest, it seemed like a natural fit to look in the Midwest. And when I saw an opening in St. Charles, I knew that it was the right place for me to again get settled here. My lifelong friends, all my family is here, and I look forward to working with all of you and helping to establish many of the things that you're talking about now are very important to me. The idea of social emotional learning, making sure students, if we are doing distance learning, that they're cared for. Another passion of mine is equity and inclusion. And I've had the good fortune of working with some very knowledgeable people about how to infuse equity and anti-racist education K-12. So I look forward to sharing some of those resources and working with all of you to make our schools good for all students. So again, I look forward to working with you, and thank you for inviting me to join your district.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Herman, for joining us tonight and for taking this opportunity to introduce yourself. And we look forward to having you here on board starting on the 1st of July and maybe a few days before that as you work on some transition. So thanks again. Mr. Mannheim, that completes the superintendent's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pearson. And on behalf of the board, welcome. We look forward to working with you as well. So, all right, that takes us to our committee reports. We'll start off with L&T. Mr. McNally.
Am I unmuted now? Good. I think I am. Okay, we met on Monday, May 18th. We were called to order at 5:30. All board members were present. We started with citizens' comments. Jennifer Pratt made some comments about instruction time and the opening in the fall. Next up, we had the superintendent update on COVID-19, which has been a staple for all of our committees since March. Our welcomes, recognitions, celebrations. Mrs. Geyer recognized the teaching staff, shared a few of the many stories and examples of where staff have connected with students and innovative ways to deliver instruction. The list can be seen on our website at this committee report. And as always, I encourage people to please go to the website and view the committee reports so they can see what's going on, because that's where a lot of the actual action takes place for the board. All the discussion really takes place there. Mr. Blomquist, Joe Blomquist from the union, thanked the teachers for their partnership and added that teachers miss being in schools with their students. He thanks the parents for taking on the tremendous task of being the co-teacher, and thanked the administration and school board for providing guidance so staff can continue to make remote learning experiences available. And our first item for discussion was the Title I school-wide waiver for Anderson Elementary School. Dr. Cindy Roosh, our Director of Staff, Family, and Student Services, provided a summary of the Title I school-wide waiver for Anderson for the 2021 school year, and that is on our consent agenda tonight. Next up was transitional math, quantitative literacy, and statistics. Dr. Christine Warren, Director of Curriculum, provided a summary of the resource recommendations for transitional math, quantitative literacy, and statistics. And again, that item is on our consent agenda this evening. The AP statistics resources. Dr. Warren again spoke about the resources for our recommended resources for AP statistics. And again, on the consent agenda this evening. Next up was phonemic awareness. And again, Dr. Christine Warren was discussing a summary of the resource recommendation for phonemic awareness. We are moving the Hegarty for K through 2 phonemic awareness resource in the amount of $4,431.46 to the consent agenda for approval tonight. We also discussed the new elementary day. Dr. Cindy Roosh, again, Director of Staff and Student Services, provided an overview of the interim plan for the new elementary day. That was approved at our May 26th meeting. It was an action item there. The next item was Curriculum Associates iReady assessment. Mr. David Chizar, Executive Director of Assessment and Accountability, and Mrs. King, Teacher on Special Assignment for Math and Science Curriculum, presented information on the iReady resource and how it meets the needs of students in the district. iReady makes differentiated instruction possible in every classroom and supports Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction. It should be noted that iReady is going to replace Performance Siri and parts of FastBridge. So while there was some cost or some cost shifts involved in that. So the total cost, it has been defrayed a bit by not using some of the other resources. This was approved on the May 26th, at the May 26th board meeting. And for future agenda items, for right now, the June meeting has been canceled. And our next scheduled meeting date is in July, and that date has yet to be determined because we are in the process of discussing those dates. We adjourned our meeting at 6:54 p.m. And again, I am going to encourage everyone to who's listening to go to the website and take a look and see the discussions that take place, so you can. We just provide a summary here so that you can see what's actually occurring and how board members are thinking about various items. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. McNally. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. Mrs. Fairgrieve, give us the business service update.
Certainly. Our Business Services Committee meeting was held on Tuesday, May 26th. We reviewed the Mid-Valley April financial statement results. We also reviewed the district financial statement results for April 30th. We have one item that we discussed and is actually on for action at the board meeting tonight, and that is related to the PE locker replacement for Red Lane Middle School. So that's further down on the agenda tonight. We have 8 items that we discussed during the committee that are actually on as part of the consent portion of the agenda tonight. That begins with a renewal for our annual assessment tools that we use. We have an RFP for actuarial services. We received a copy paper bids that will be on for consent. We're establishing the amount for the treasurer's surety bond, and that's established on an annual basis. We also have renewals for software and support through our IT department. We have received final bids for elementary school playground improvements for Bell Graham. And we have some sidewalk and concrete curb repair related to the Charles Haynes Center that will be reviewed on consent as well. And then finally, some field restoration for that same facility also. And then finally, we had several discussion items. One of them related to reviewing what would be required and considered for all-day kindergarten. We had a very lengthy discussion related to that. So again, would encourage the community to listen to the audio related to that meeting to really get the full context. But a decision was made that we would revisit this idea again in the fall, and hopefully we'll be able to coordinate that with results from our facility master plan. And speaking of that, we did also get an update from the firm Wold Architects that is guiding our facility master plan. And then we also had a construction update related to the Haynes Center. Our next meeting will be in July.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Fairgrieve. All right, that takes us to the CAC. Mrs. McCabe, is that you?
Yep, tonight it's me. We met with our exec team on May 27th. Not all of our members were able, the team were able to join us, but we did have a good discussion. There were no citizen comments that night. We did debrief about our May 14th CAC meeting, which included the entire group. And our team felt that the format and the technology worked great. And they were really pleased with how well it was to talk in small groups. They'd like to have a little more time in those small groups. They felt that the presentation of the data from the survey that was sent out by the district went very well, and they had a chance to look through it and have a better understanding of the results. There was discussion about the roles of the exec team in the small groups and how to help facilitate those conversations. As well as how do we make sure that we're hearing from more people than, especially in the era of social distancing, how do we make sure we're hearing more voices through our CAC liaisons? We will have future meetings in July. Dr. Pearson talked about having the CAC members join the task force, and Mrs. Smith sent out a survey and helped coordinate that. And then we're going to meet mid-July to hear about the strategic commitments and begin to have that conversation and interactive work. We again encourage board members to join. Dr. Pearson will be presenting with, I assume, leadership staff as well. And then in August, we will have the architects come in and begin to work with the CAC on getting information about the facilities plan. So we were done before 7 o'clock, I think. It was not a lengthy meeting, but we felt really good about what had happened previously and are looking forward to meeting again in the summer. As you may recall, we had not planned to meet in the summer, but having to cancel that April meeting, I believe it was, maybe even March, we decided we needed to have a meeting this summer in order to catch up. And that finishes the report.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. McCabe. I don't believe policy met. Mr. Bryant, do you have anything to add to the policy?
Nope, we did not meet. We have tentatively scheduled August. We'll be meeting to have that'll be our next policy meeting.
Okay, great, thank you. Intergovernmental, does Dr. Pearson or Mrs. Smith want to add anything from intergovernmental? Not hearing anything. Okay.
Yeah, there's not really anything to add. We certainly did coordinate and talk about kind of what our response has been and to COVID-19 across the different agencies. The library, of course, is moving in to the Haynes building, and they are anxiously awaiting the opportunity to open and trying to get everything ready for that. Of course, the Park District is trying to navigate some of the same kind of rules and procedures that we are, and trying to make services available to the community. And so those were some of the conversations that we had at this month's intergovernmental.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. That concludes our committee reports. So that will take us to item 5, which is our 4 action. Do I have a motion to approve participation in the child nutrition program for fiscal year 2021?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Wild, Mr. Bryant? Is there any discussion pertaining to this? This is kind of our yearly participation we have to sign as a board. All right, not hearing anything.
I was
Ms.
just gonna
Ratcher?
say it really quick as a reminder, this goes straight to board. Doesn't go through committee because it's just our typical yearly contract. Just want to highlight that.
Thanks, Ms. Weibel. I appreciate that.
No worries.
All right, Ms. Rushford?
Mr. Bryant,
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrieve,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Ms. Weibel,
Yes.
Mrs. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Mannheim.
Yes. Motion passes. Item B, do I have a motion to award a contract for the Rutland Middle School PE locker replacement?
So moved.
Second.
I'm not sure. Mr.
Doesn't
McNally?
matter.
Thank
Whoever.
you. Is there any further discussion? As Mrs. Berger mentioned, we did discuss this at Business Services, but it was pending bid opening, and that is in your packet. So is there any other further discussion on that topic?
Mr. Mann, would you like just a real quick summary?
Sure, absolutely.
So I just to let you know, this bid did come in under bid. We had 3 bidders. Larson Equipment was the winner, who also did the lockers at Thompson. So those were the original lockers at Redling that are going to be scheduled for replacement. And it comes in at $124,900.
Thank you. Any other comments pertaining to this? Okay, not hearing. See, Ms. Freshford.
Mrs. Faircreeve,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Ms. Weibel,
Yes.
Ms. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Bryant,
Yes.
Mr. Manheim.
Yes. All right, motion passes. All right, that completes our 4 action items. That takes us to item 6, which is the consent agenda. Would anybody like anything pulled from tonight's?
Yes, please, Mr. Manheim. I would like to pull R and S, please.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve consent agenda without items R and S?
So moved.
Mr. McNally,
Second.
Ms. Fairgrieve, Ms. Rashford?
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Ms. Weibel,
Yes.
Mrs. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Bryant,
Yes.
Mrs. Faircreeve,
Yes.
Mr. Manheim.
Yes. Okay, consent agenda passes, sans items R and S. So that will take us to item R, the motion to approve 6-month review of closed session minutes pursuant to the Open Meetings Act.
So moved.
Mr. McNally, Mr. Bryant, thank you. All right, any items or discussion?
Yeah, so let me just explain, as this typically is for me every 6 months, I usually vote no to these. So for this one, this is because some of the minutes that we're going to be releasing either sentences from, and not the intact one because I was here for, but most of the ones that have sentences from are before my time. My personal preference is that I don't vote for those. So I usually abstain or vote no. So that's just my personal preference. So I asked to remove it. So for those that are fairly new to the board, I think this only happened once since you've been on.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Weibel. Any other comments? All right, Ms. Rashford?
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Ms. Weibel,
Abstain.
Mrs. Barker,
Abstain as well.
Mr. Bryant,
Yes.
Mrs. Faircreeve,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. Manheim.
Yes. All right, motion. That takes us to item S. Do I have a motion to approve resolution authorizing the destruction of verbatim recordings of closed board meetings?
So moved.
Mr. McNally,
Second.
Mr. Bryant, thank you.
Thank you, President Manheim, for going through the exercise yet again every 6 months. This particular item S, resolution to authorize the destruction, we do fall within the recommended parameters of 18 months. I personally don't think it's long enough, so I always do vote no to this. So it's just something that I've done since I've been on the board, just to explain to our newer members. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Ms. Rashford?
Ms. Weibel,
No.
Mrs. Barker,
No.
Mr. Bryant,
Yes.
Mrs. Faircreeve,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Mr. Manheim.
Yes. Motion passed. All right, that concludes our consent agenda items. Number 7, for information, which is in your packet, your Freedom of Information Acts, D303's financial report, Mid-Valley's financial report, and then our district enrollment. Is there any new business? No.
I just
All
want
right.
to ask Mr. Mannheim, for you and Dr. Pearson to, at some time in the future, that we do talk about diversity. I know we're having our meeting on Wednesday, so I'm sure that will be on our topic for goals. So just to let the public know that it's coming up for discussion. We're just not sure when yet. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'm just not sure. We just don't know when yet. So.
Correct. Yeah, we're not sure when. So
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. All right. Any other items for new business? All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn to closed session by roll call vote for the purpose of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who serve as independent contractors in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or specific volunteers of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony of a complaint lodged against an employee, a specific individual who serves as an independent contractor in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or a volunteer of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Rinaldi. Ms. Weibel? Ms. Rexford?
Mrs. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Bryant,
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrieve,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Ms. Weibel,
Sorry, yes.
Mr. Mannheim.
Yes. Okay. It is 7:52. We will adjourn to our breakout room for a closed session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
You need to unmute.
yes, I was going to say, cannot hear you.
I'm learning.
There you go.
All right. It is 9:38 p.m. and we are back in open session. Ms. Rashford, you call roll.
Mrs. Faircree,
Here.
Mrs. McKay,
Here,
Mr. McNally,
Here.
Ms. Weibel,
Here.
Mrs. Barker,
Here.
Mr. Bryant,
Here.
Mr. Mannheim.
Here. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Weibel, Mr. McNally? I don't know.
And then Mrs. Barker.
Barker, 3, 4, 5 of us. All right.
Just pick a couple.
Can we do a unanimous?
Mhm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. All right, we are adjourned at 9:39 p.m.
good job, Mr. Mannheim.